Today it's raining outside, it's a thunderstorm, so I cannot go out. So me and you, we're gonna hang out. We're gonna learn about curves versus levels. First of all, any of those two are better than the traditional contrast slider, period. I'm gonna explain you exactly why. In the settings, I've got a photo ready, which is clearly says this is what the video about. But I have three tabs open, one with the brightness and contrast, one with the curves, and the third one is obviously the levels. Now, my question is that which one is better? Now, first of all, I'm going to show you exactly why the traditional contrast slider is not as good than the other two. Essentially, contrast is simple. We use that in English in general. The contrast means different. So when you modify the contrast, you're basically stretching the highlight and the shadow part, so you have like a nice contrast between those part of the luminance side. Now what happened with the contrast slider, the traditional one, that every time you using the slider, it's equally stretching the black and the white at the same time. So you basically don't have any control over any of those two. You have to live with what it provides you. What if there is a photograph where you need contrast on the dark area? That means that, let's say you want to make the dark part more darker, but while you don't want to touch the mid-tone or the highlight. In the contrast sliders, it can do that. I'm going to show you why. So pay attention to the waveform that I have this available. If I want to add some contrast using the traditional contrast slider, I just have to use the slider, right? So if I add, let's say about 14 or move it up all the way, let's say I go all the way to 100. What is happening? Pay attention to the waveform. It's going all the way up in the bright part and then crushing the black like no tomorrow. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't, but you definitely do not have any control, period. Let's pull it down all the way to 100. Let's see what's happening. Pay attention to my hair or my shadow. At the same time, my glass. My glass, it took away all the highlight, which is probably a good thing. Now you can clearly see a little bit behind the glass. You see less reflection. It recovered quite a bit of a highlight. At the same time, it took away all the contrast or the dark from my shadow area. Now, it's not about the question of which one is better or not, but you definitely do not have a control. You have to, every time you use the contrast slider, it both affecting equally the dark and the bright. This is why I don't recommend you to use contrast slider. Instead, go for either level or curve because they both give you more control. Now, second one, which is our video about, is the level versus curves. Now, which one is much better? Now, put it this way, level is a lot easier to use. Why? Because you have just three things to think about. You have the black or shadow, you have the white or highlight, you have gamma or midtone or brightness. All those three are same. What do I mean by that? Let's say now pay attention to the graph again. I'm going to put it right next to it. If I add black or shadow without affecting my midtone right in the middle or the bright part, I can just put the black up without affecting my bright side. Pay attention to my waveform. Check this out. So if I want to add black, it's adding black without affecting my white or my gamma. That's it. So that's how amazing it is. If I do vice versa, opposite, which I don't need at this point because I think I have enough brightness, but I'm going to show you. So if I want to add more white, I can add more white without affecting my dark or midtone. Look at the intensity waveform. If I want to do the opposite, like you would do the contrast slider, you reduce contrast. Let's say only thing I want to do is to reduce white because my reflection on my glass is too strong. So I want to get rid of it. I want to reduce it at least as much as I can. So I can just do that. Check this one out. More I'm doing it, more is affecting the brightest part without affecting my midtone or my shadow. We can clearly see it's only pulling down the top part. It's not doing equally at the same time like the contrast slider did. So what I can do exactly the same thing with the black. So I don't want to touch my bright part or midtone. Only thing I want to work on my darkest shadow part. So check out under my arm or under my cheek. So if I don't do that, I could just pull the slider like that. And clearly you can see that there is no effect on my reflection on the glass, neither on my cheek. You can also look at the waveform. It's only pulling the white up like that without affecting the middle and the top part. How amazing is that? Now, what if you just don't want to do any of those two? Let's say you don't want to touch the brightest part of my glass reflection, neither you want to add anything on my, or don't want to modify my darkest part, just want to work on my midtone or brightness. So you can just use the gamma slider. Check this one out. So you can either add brightness by pulling it all the way to the left, or reduce it by pulling it all the way to the right. Now, Photoshop works pretty much the same way. So if you are looking at the Affinity Photo, and if you're familiar with the Photoshop, you know exactly what I'm talking about. Now, this is it. So levels has better control than the contrast slider. The traditional contrast slider, you have good amount of control between your black, your white, and your midtone, and you can work all of those brightness levels individually. Curve, like, is it good enough or better than levels? So I'm gonna turn this one on. Now, similarly, again, I'm gonna repeat that in the contrast, if you add contrast, it's equally adding white or black at the same time. If you are pulling down, it's equally reducing the white and black at the same time. You have no control of any of those parts individually. You have to work both of them equally. In the level, you have individual control of black, white, and midtone, or shadow and highlight or brightness. They all means the same. So you have individual control with levels. This is amazing. Suppose I want to add some contrast. Let's say, again, I want to add some shadow on my dark side. So I can do that, and I can just pull the midtone up, and I can individually, each channel, I can precisely control. I can reduce or add little bit of luminance on every single part of the photo equally. That is the power of curves. I can do the same thing. Check this one out. If I reduce highlight and pull the midtone up like that, it is, I know that photo looks ugly, but for the sake of example, and I'm going to show you the scope, for the sake of example, it's just working on my brightest part while not even touching my dark part. Check my under the cheek of the skin, and I can do exact opposite. If I pull this one up and try to, let's say, reduce shadow without affecting my highlight, I can do that easily without any problem, without any stress. You can clearly see it's like a long string, and you can individually move them like a music. Like, I'm getting emotional here with the curve, but that is the level of power that curve has, that you can precisely control every single pixel of your photograph. So my answer is that if you want to add contrast with your photograph, in your photograph, do not use contrast slider. Get rid of it. Forget about it. It doesn't exist in your life. Instead, either choose level, which is a lot easier, or curves, which is a bit more precise. Level, you have to work 3 sliders individually instead of 1 single slider in contrast. You have white, or you have black, or you have gamma. You can add some, you can reduce some, whatever you want to do. Same goes with the individual color channels. Curves, it literally can change every single part of your photograph without affecting anything else. If you want to protect your highlight while working on your contrast, the dark, you can do that. You can work on your midtone, you can do that without affecting the other two. You can even work on the lower midtone or higher midtone, and so on. And same goes for individual color channel. For example, if you change from mustard to red, you can do that. You can add red in the shadow without affecting the highlight. You can get rid of red from the shadow without affecting the highlight or midtone. You can do the same thing in your midtone without affecting the highlight and shadow. You can do the same thing in your highlight without affecting the midtone and shadow. And you can do the same thing with red, green, and blue equally. And if you know and have enough knowledge about color mixing, you can create some amazing photograph. So my answer is that don't use contrast. Instead, pick level or curve, and you are sorted. I hope this video is well explained and useful. If so, please like and subscribe, and I see you in the next video. Bye bye.